In my shop, all over the place, I have miscellaneous battery chargers for my AA's, AAA's, for my camera, for my crane, and I don't have a good place to store them. Maybe you have a similar issue in your shop or your home, so I need to create some sort of a solution. Let's start with a sketch that uses existing Decora wall plugs, stores the AA's, the AAA's, and has a place to plug in all the chargers, so we have something nicely designed for the shop, and then we'll build it. My name is Eric Strebel. I'm an industrial designer. Welcome to my channel about product design and making. I hope that you like, enjoy, and become a subscriber. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up, and then you hit the bell. Hit the bell again, so you get the little parentheses around it. That way you'll be notified every time I have a new video. I'm a big fan of the original Alien movies with the H.R. Giger xenomorphs, and I want this charger to look like it was on board the Nostromo. The Nostromo had a simple white sci-fi interior that was really clean, and that's the look that I'm going for. For those of you guys who don't know, the Nostromo was the tug ship that went down to the planet, ultimately picked up the alien, and caused a little bit of turmoil for Ripley and the crew. I'm going to start by making a router template for the Decora plugs that we're going to use. Then we're going to head over to the table saw, and I'm going to cut some 3/8 MDF for the entire charger box that we're going to make. So 3/8, roughly 1 centimeter. I cut the pieces. These are the sides. It's MDF material, so I'm wearing a dust mask. This stuff is, held together with glue. It's not great stuff. Be safe. I'm laying out where the plugs are going to go. On the drill press here, I'm going to drill a hole for the router to drop into, and we're going to air nail the template on that we cut out earlier onto the MDF, and I just air nail that in place, and we drop them onto the router here, and we're going to cut out each of the holes for the wall plates. I'm going to have to come back after and do the corners, of course. That turned out pretty good. Even Zoe, my daughter, who's working the camera today, approves. On the back side, some of the material needs to be removed off the MDF so that the Decora plugs can drop into the correct height. Here I'm cutting the sides to the right length and dimension on the table saw. I'm going to use a PC connector out of an old server case that I scavenged. And this is going to be the main power connection, and we are going to Bondo squeeze that in to make a perfect fit a little bit later on, but for right now it's a rough opening and that's good enough. Let's start gluing up the pieces together. Again, I'm going to use air nailer to air nail all the MDF pieces together. I'm going to use some wood glue as well to make sure that we get a nice bond and a good connection between all of the pieces. So once the sides are put on, we're going to put the end plate and the little compartment pieces on. Here's the end plate that you saw me mill out the battery connector before. That also has a Decora plug in the top of it. And again, go through, air nail everything together. And now we're going to work on the bottom. I have a couple of compartments. This is slightly different than the original sketch. Here, while I'm waiting for things to dry, I get a chance to come in and square off the edges of all the holes that we cut for the Decora plugs. I need to cut a little divider piece that goes in the bottom 2 boxes, and I use a square to make sure everything is nice and square. I cut up some little trim pieces to make all the surfaces flush, and I come back with a counter punch here and sink all the air nails, because we're going to Bondo all of those little holes so that we have a nice smooth surface. So once the polyester body filler has had a chance to dry, I rough sand it really quick by hand, and I'm going to get on it with a palm sander, an Orbital sander here, and get everything nice and smooth and flush. I'm using about a 300 or 400 grit sandpaper on the Orbital sander. Once that's all smooth, we're going to come in with a 1/2 inch bit, and we're going to round off the 4 corners of the box, and that's going to give it a little softer sci-fi look. Once those 4 corners are rounded off, we're going to come back probably with a 3/8 or a 1/4 inch bit, and we'll do the front facing surfaces. This is going to give it a little bit more of a product design, softer kind of sci-fi feel to fit into the interior of the Nostromo. This is very much how you would build a prop for like a movie as well. Here I'm laying out some 1/4 inch hardboard, and I'm using that to make the channels that are going to hold the AA's and the AAA's. And I'm just kind of laying out all the pieces here and figuring out what's good ergonomically. I'm going to glue the stuff together with some yellow wood glue, and we're going to clamp that in place. That stuff is drying. I need to work on the little supports for the back plate to mount the entire thing onto the wall eventually. Here I'm painting the inside of the battery holders because it's going to be super tough to paint that, of course, so I paint that ahead of time. Using a Dremel tool here, and I'm just basically scraping the MDF with a series of little score marks or some holes. And I'm going to epoxy that hardboard onto the 3/4 MDF because I can't really nail it, air nail it in. It's going to split the material, so gluing it is my only option. It's a 5-minute epoxy, and I use some clamps. Luckily, there's holes in the piece, and so I can actually get some clamps to clamp everything in nice and square. Here's how the pieces all go together. I use a little chisel after a few minutes to scrape off some of the epoxy that may have oozed out so I don't have any issues with the batteries sliding. There's a little tray that goes at the bottom that allows me to select the batteries as needed. And here I'm cutting out the little finger groove on the bandsaw, and we're going to clean those up on the oscillating spindle sander in a second once they're rough cut. Spindle sander is pretty nice. I don't use it a lot, but it's certainly super handy. Makes things a lot easier. I'm sanding off the front edges just to make things a little bit more human and a little softer to the touch where you have to reach your fingers in. We're going to come back in here with some yellow glue, some wood glue I should say, and we're going to clamp that down to the front as well, and that's where the batteries are going to get stopped and held in place. I need to cut keyhole slots for the back plate so that the entire unit can be mounted onto the wall, and you'll see this piece in a little bit more detail later. The entire unit's been put together, and now it needs to get a good coat of primer. I am using some bin primer out of HVLP gun, and the primer, of course, seals up the MDF. It really needs that because it tends to soak up all the paint if you want to get a good finish. Primer is definitely highly recommended, and it just gives you that quality finish. The bin is pretty thick. I think I thin it out with a little bit of solvent just to help it go through the gun a little bit better. Here I'm wearing a mask and I'm doing a little sanding so any little bits get smoothed out. We get an ultra nice finish for the final top coat. I'm going to use a glossy enamel, and first I'm going to just in the corners with a brush in the corners to get that filled, because that can be a tough thing to finish with your spray gun. Again, in the HVLP goes the enamel paint, and that's laying down a really nice glossy top coat so I can get a nice finish on the final piece. I lay down 2 coats of the enamel finish so I get a nice protective white finish on the entire piece. The back plate here that you saw me working on earlier I didn't prime it, and you don't see it, but I'm still spraying on a little bit of enamel just to seal it up. Now it's time to assemble everything. Drop in some of the Decora plugs or outlets. The ones on the left here, I have to pre-wire the ground a little bit. And since I don't want any screws shown from the backside, I'm going to epoxy these Decora wall plates into place where normally the screw would go. Probably not to code, but it's going to give me a nice clean finish on the front surface, and it's certainly going to be plenty of strong enough to hold those plates in and withstand any force of plugging and unplugging stuff. Let's attach the main power supply connector right here. I'm going to shoot in a couple of screws to hold that in place. And the thing that we have left to do here is wire it up. These wall plates outlets have little holes on the bottom where you can literally stick in a 14 gauge wire. Makes it super easy to wire up this project, so all I have to do is strip off the ends and cut the pieces to length, and I can literally push the wire into the Decora connectors to wire it up. Makes it super simple for this type of an application or even your home application. I'll put the final crimp connector onto the main plug, and I'm just crimping that down. I'm going to pop that on there and then plug it into the first Decora plug, and the wiring is going to be done. Since this is a sci-fi inspired piece, the part wouldn't be complete without some graphics. So I got my buddy Alex Hatch to cut me up some vinyl graphics. You can check out his business in the Instagram link below for some of the stuff that he does. Also a designer and maker, and you can check out his cool Instagram feed. Now, if you're an eagle-eyed viewer, you'll see I'm putting down a Lockmart logo. They are the manufacturers of the Nostromo, actually, before the Wayland Corporation purchased it and converted it into the Tug. So this is a Lockmart product. I lay down some tape, and I use that as a grid system. This is a basic graphic design technique. If you don't know what a grid system is and you're a graphic designer, you should figure that out. Anyway, always good to line up all your stuff, and I use a grid to make things line up here. The final vinyl graphics, the AA and the AAA stickers. It's time to mount this thing onto the wall. So I got 4 screws in the wall already, and this is going to help me drop the part down in those keyhole slots that I machined earlier. Plug it in. Here I'm plugging in all the adapters and power supplies that charge up all my batteries. AA's on the right, AAA's on the left. Oh, as a bonus, cell phone holder and charger. That's a little bit of that product design stuff coming into play. How to make your product more versatile and have more features and benefits. And it holds a tablet as well. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can click on the little icon on the bottom right of the screen to do that. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Rock on. Click here to watch some of the other design and making videos that I have. If you'd like to have your music featured in one of my videos, drop me a line.